Hello, guys, welcome back. Today's true crime story again is on relationship. I did one yesterday on marriage. This one is on dating, if you want to put it that way. And it looks at the case of Quaneesha Johnson versus the state of Georgia, in which she is accused of taking the life of her live in boyfriend in front of her daughters through gunfire. Yeah, you heard me right. Things are going haywire out there because in the past, maybe I should say up until recently, relationships were so fun. Relationships were the safe zone where people went to find companionship and long lasting love, to find our soulmate. But now it's looking like relationships are becoming one of the likely mediums through which a life can be lost. You can let me know if you don't agree with me by just commenting in the comment section. If you agree with me too, let me know in the comment section. Now, this lady, Quanisha, has actually been sentenced, or she's been found guilty and sentenced, let me put it that way, for what she did. But the details of it are so bizarre. The effrontery, the resilience, and the gall and the zeal to decide that I'm going inside, I'm going to get a gun, and I'm going to end this guy's life. I'm not here to judge the case, it's already been judged, but we are going to get into the facts out there and look at what transpired and the lessons that we can learn from this as a society going forward. I always say that my channel is not just a true crime story channel, but it's also a channel to educate, because up until these stories come up and are highlighted in the way in which they are, these people, be it victim or culprit, are usually regular members of society, just like you and I, irrespective of where you find yourself around the world watching this video. And it's imperative that we begin to learn from these incidents to appreciate the fact that if we are not extra patient, if we are not more tolerant, if we don't learn to love more, if we don't learn to appreciate our spouse's mistakes, if we don't learn to understand that murder or suicide or violence is not the answer, you could find yourself in this situation, or a loved one of yours could find him or herself in such a situation. The incident started on the 26th of November 2022, but dare I say, I don't think that is when the incident actually started. What do I mean? I think that mostly before incidents like this would have finally erupted, where the police will be called in, there will be stints of it happening, maybe in small bouts across time or across several periods up until the final D-Day when this showdown would happen. And I think that it's important as dating partners or spouses to understand that sometimes you could be right, but the manner in which you approach the case could be wrong. So it's not so much so about I know my rights or I've been offended or whatever. Yeah, you could have been offended. You would know your rights, all right? But the manner in which you approach it can either escalate or de escalate the issue. And I think de escalation of issues should be the goal. It shouldn't be about keeping score or deciding to take something out on your spouse or your partner because the person has made a mistake. Sometimes a simple, sincere, I'm sorry, just quenches the fire. And I think that we are gradually becoming a generation where we are so egotistical and full of ourselves that some people feel that they are too big to say sorry to people who they either do not respect in their minds or look down upon per virtue of gender or financial status. If you agree with me on this, let me know in the comment section. If you don't, let me know in the comment section. But this is an observation I've made, and this is irrespective of gender. It comes across from either side from time to time, depending on who you are dealing with. So on the 26th of November 2022, Johnson actually called the police. She initiated a call to the police, and the police followed through and came to her home. Now, this is a home that she shared with her boyfriend by name Smith, along with her kids. Now, when the police came, Johnson's complaint against Smith to the police was that he was threatening her. Now, this is a very common situation, especially leading up from the past 2 decades to date, where domestic violence is almost always ending in a situation where the guy is the aggressor or the man is the aggressor. But I bet you sometimes that is not the case, but some people would claim it is because society in itself, once you hear domestic violence, it's almost automatic to expect that the aggressor would be the man. But sometimes the aggressor is the woman. We've seen that in the case of the Hell on Wheels teenager. If you haven't yet heard of that story, you can check my playlist. Very crazy one. We saw that again in the case I just posted yesterday, Divorced to Death, where a man lost his wife, allegedly, lost his life, allegedly, due to the schemes and plots of his ex wife. So it's proven there's some cases out there that sometimes the women can be the aggressors, but most often they're actually the victims. And if you follow my channel, you realize that I'm actually running a campaign on femicide to help reduce the rising rate of femicide. And if you want to support, all you have to do is just go to the comment section and type please stop the femicide or hashtag say no to femicide, and then share our videos with people out there to spread the message. That's all. That's our own little way of trying to make some change. So when police came, Johnson actually indicated that Smith was threatening her. And as is expected, the police would take charge of the situation. But whilst they were there, it turns out that Johnson was observed to not really be intimidated by Smith, because for somebody who has called the police that you are being threatened, it's expected that you felt your life was in danger, or you could have called for the sake of the threat in itself. That's understandable. But then it's also expected that you wouldn't be the aggressor. But according to police reports, they observed that it seemed like Johnson was more of the aggressor and Smith was more of the laid back person. So I beg to ask, was Quaneesha Johnson in any real danger or feel threatened in any way at all? Or she was actually seeking to play on the victim card that is ascribed to the female in instances of alleged domestic violence or domestic disturbance between a lady and a guy, where society almost automatically concludes that the guy is at fault. I think that sometimes some ladies take advantage of this and the lines are blurred to the point it takes a lot for the guy to be able to exonerate himself. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but according to the reports, when they came, they observed that Quanisha Smith was repeatedly antagonizing Smith. So it didn't look like she was the one being threatened or she was the one in any form of danger. And it even goes on to say that at a point in time, when Smith had come out to see the police officers, he went back inside the home, at which point Johnson actually asked the police officers that what would happen if I actually shoot him? Yeah, she did, or she's reported to have asked that question. That was what Quaneesha Johnson reportedly asked, that what would happen if I happen to shoot him in self-defense? Now the question is, you called 911 to report that you are being threatened by your living boyfriend whilst your kids are also there. The police are there. Now, if you felt threatened, let the police do their job now. They are on the premises already. Why then do you go asking what would happen if you shoot him out of self-defense? That is the first question people are asking. It's almost as though it was being premeditated and she was looking for an out, where I'll claim it was in self-defense, so I shot him. And probably I could get off and get away with it. But that's just one school of thought. But the other school of thought is she may have been in danger previously, maybe not on that day per se, but like I said, This could be the climax of several small pockets of incidents of this nature which have been happening in times past. So probably she felt some form of danger coming from Smith over time, and she was now looking for a way out where if it comes up again in whichever form she was scared of, she would also pull a gun on him and shoot him to defend herself. So it could be here or it could be there. But looking at the fact that the police are already there and she's asking this, I felt it wasn't so necessary. And it depends on when she was going to actually do something with this advice, or let me say response or question that she asked the police about her shooting Smith in self-defense and what would happen afterwards. But if you ask this question when the police are on site and then you go back inside and then you start attacking him, you pull out a gun on him and then you shoot him, I think that that was a premeditated thing. If it had happened maybe some few days afterwards, then the debate would have been more difficult because you can't really say that it's premeditated. These are my views though, but I'm thinking that the timeline between when she asked the police officers these questions and went back in to attack Smith and eventually shoot and take his life is too short. I don't know if you agree with me. Let me know in the comment section. But I feel that it was something that she premeditated. And she was actually caught on the police cam because Smith actually came out saying that Quaneesha had hit him on the head with something, a tire iron, and that she was threatening to shoot him. And then there was a gunshot before Smith would step out of the house and approach police. So the video showed that he was actually the victim now, not her. And I think that this lady probably has a temper. It's easier to associate aggression with males mostly because if a young this is my view though. You can let me know if you don't agree. But I think it's easier to associate aggression with males more than females because usually if by default the act has happened and there were no witnesses and you came and you are looking at the male and the female and they are both sitting down, probably even trying to give a smile. If you are not objective, you find it more difficult to believe the female is capable of the aggression than you will believe that the male is capable, especially if she's a pretty lady. Yeah, I've seen this happen. And I think that it takes great police work and an excellent level of objectivity for you not to fall for this type of bias because it's there, it's always there, unless it's so obvious and there are witnesses to corroborate that she was actually the aggressor. But imagine the police were not there to see this and they came after it had happened. You can imagine how difficult it would be to believe that she wasn't the aggressor, unless maybe other ballistic and forensic evidence points to that direction. But I think that largely there are some women out there who are playing the victim card, even though silently away from the public, they are the aggressors, not victims. And I think that in this case, Quaneesha, at this particular point, when the police were there, is one of such ladies. That's not to say she might not have ever been victimized in the past by Smith, because it turns out he's also an ex-con and he has a dark history. And I think that both of them were generally toxic. They probably had a toxic relationship, so it was more like a give and take form of it. But it's unfortunate that it will climax in this point where Quaneesha would end up being the trigger person to pull the trigger on Smith and take his life. And the other bit of it is it happened in front of her daughters, her 8-year-old daughter and her 2-year-old daughter. And again, the trauma sets in. What was it so much so that you have to do this in front of your 8-year-old daughter and your 2-month-old daughter? And they were the only witnesses too. So at a point in time, when the trial started, her 8-year-old daughter actually had to come and testify And there are some people who are saying that maybe she lied to favor her mom because in her testimony, she didn't actually say she saw her mom shooting Smith. She said that they were quarreling. Smith was trying to attack her mom. She heard a gunshot, but she didn't see her mom shooting Smith, obviously. And for me, I know there's an assumption out there that kids don't lie. I'm not saying she did, but I think sometimes we all know kids lie, especially if you have to lie to save mommy and daddy. Who knows? But well, the courts, I'm sure, did their work and they vetted other things that are key. So this was how things played out. But all that didn't save her because the jury were also on point and they weighed the facts of the issue as they are. And I tip my hats off to the jury because, like I said, that bias usually exists. And to have a jury having to deliberate on this, especially in an era where there's a high rate of increase in femicides against women, especially in relationships and marriages, I think that the jury had a tall order to perform as far as their work was concerned. And they did. Although they came with a mixed verdict, they were able to find a common ground to actually find her guilty of certain charges and for the sentence to also be decided eventually. So, this is what happened after the jury deliberated. One, they acquitted Quaneesha Johnson on charges of malice murder. That was the first one. But then they found her guilty of other charges, which included voluntary manslaughter, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children for a shooting that would end up killing her boyfriend by name DeMonte Smith. Now, on this issue, DeMonte Smith's parents also spoke. His mom actually made a statement talking about the fact that Quaneesha Johnson had a certain darkness in her. And for me, I think that it's a likelihood. I don't know what the conflict was about on that night, but how can you get so angry? We all do get angry from time to time, but how do you get so angry you're able to pull a gun on the man you are living with in front of your 8-year-old daughter and 2-month-old daughter and take his life? Think that that is a whole new level of crazy, and it puts her in a context where she's going to be very difficult to be believed if she tries to plead provocation or whatever, because the children should have been the red flag for you to find composure and keep your head, if anything at all. And I'm happy that she was found guilty for child cruelty as well, because you have scarred the children for life. I'm hoping that they would get some sort of help to get them to free themselves actually or be guided out of the trauma this can have on them and the kind of negative influence it can have on them as they grow up. But I think this is just too heavy. And I don't understand why it's beginning to happen like this. In the case I posted before this one, Divorced to Death, about the murder of Jared Brightgan. This guy was shot in a car with his 2-year-old daughter in the car. And it's been alleged that the whole thing was orchestrated by his ex wife and her current husband, with whom Jared has a set of twins. So, what gives actually? I just don't understand it. Where are we taking this world to? Such that human life seems to be becoming more and more expendable, and it's all about what is in it for some people, or how close you are, or the easy access you have to a gun, and you are good to go. I think that we need to go back and find ourselves as human beings and understand that definitely misunderstandings are going to come up. It's not actually wrong to get angry about something. Sometimes it just shows the passion with which you want something or the value you put on something. But the problem about getting angry is not in the anger itself, but what you allow the anger to push you to do. There are certain things you can never ever come back from. In as much as you felt that Smith or DeMonte Smith had done something to you, Quaneesha Johnson's actions have also gone so overboard. She has tried to kill a mosquito with a machine gun, and you've ended up scarring your daughters probably for life. How do you get around this? Her family were trying to ask for leniency during the sentencing, but I don't think that was going to be possible, especially because of the children involved. It is bad enough you've taken the life of a human being, and I think that it's worse and so worse that you had to do it in front of an 8-year-old and a 2-month-old. How do we even begin to appreciate the extent of emotional, psychological damage that you've done to these kids by virtue of what you exposed them to that night? Let's try and do better. Whether you are in a relationship, whether you are coming out of one, whether you are in a marriage, whether you are going into one, or whether you are just friends at all. Understand that in as much as some people will offend you, you also need to make sure that you are not taking actions to escalate situations, but rather you are taking actions to de-escalate the situation. This is the case as has been now, and I hope that we are learning from this. Let me know what you've picked up from this in the comment section. Whether you are in a relationship already, about to get into one, in a marriage, about to get into one. Let's learn. I think that true crime does not necessarily have to be about all the dark and gory stuff. I think there's a silver lining in it where those of us who get to see or hear about these stories also take some knowledge and wisdom from it, because one of the keys of wisdom is to learn from other people's experiences and not wait to be caught up in those same mistakes before you take a lesson from it. As usual, like I would say, subscribe if you are yet to do so, share our videos to promote our femicide campaign, and please keep an eye out and stay safe out there. Catch you next time.